The nonprofit MBA purpose is to provide new business insights and fresh creative ideas for executive directors and their teams that will help them improve their organization. Here is your host, Stephen Halasnik.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Stephen Halasnik, and I will be your host today for the Nonprofit MBA podcast. For those of you who don't know me, I am the co-founder of Financing Solutions, and Financing Solutions is the leading provider in the United States of lines of credit to small nonprofits. I firmly believe that every nonprofit should have a line of credit in place. I think our customers would tell you the same thing. It was always been very hard for nonprofits to get a line of credit. And if you're interested in learning more, please visit our website at nonprofitmbapodcast.com. Again, that's nonprofitmbapodcast.com. Today, I am very excited to be speaking with Beth Brodovsky from Iris Creative. As the president of Iris Creative Group, Beth Brodovsky works with nonprofit leaders to focus their audience and move them to action. For 25 years, Beth and her team have developed nonprofit branding, marketing, and fundraising communication. She runs the nonprofit toolkit. She runs training programs to help grow in-house marketing skills on staff. And she hosts the 200-episode Driving Participation podcast and speaks on two nonprofits marketing nationally. Beth, welcome to today's Nonprofit MBA podcast.
Thank you for having me, Stephen. I'm thrilled to be here. And I have to say, as somebody that's been in business for 25 years, boy, am I glad I got a line of credit when on the years that things looked great, because it saved me on the years it didn't.
Well, I feel the same way. I mean, over those years, I always had a line of credit. I got caught short one year with not having, I actually had a line of credit, but it wasn't enough. And I went back to my bank and I said, my business was kicking butt. It was doing really well. And I came up short on payroll. I was going to be $19,000 short in like a couple of days, and went to the bank and they were like, sure, you can get an increase. We'll let you know in 45 days.
Yeah,
I'm like,
right.
So I always had one. And I'm a passionate believer about it. I think the way we have it set up, it really makes sense. But let's, get into today's topic, which is brand strategy and audience targeting. It just both can be applied, right, to both nonprofits and small businesses.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Of course, branding is always, it's always a big, so when I first started my career, I started working for a very, very huge company. And I always thought that branding was not something small organizations should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts on that?
That's such a great question, especially for people that have worked at really large organizations. The number one question I have to ask everybody, and I've actually had to answer myself, is, well, what do you mean by branding? Because people will always say, oh, well, we just rebranded, or we need to rebrand. And I feel like something that, the idea of branding has gotten out there in the ether. So people have heard of it, they've thought of it, but there's so many different ideas about what it means. I've had people come to me and say, we need to rebrand. And what they really wanted to do was change their newsletter. I've had people say we just rebranded. And what they actually did was they updated their website. Sometimes it's a logo, but sometimes branding means something deeper than that. And I think that's a lot of times where people think, well, this isn't for us. This is for big companies, because there's research involved. There's strategy. There's all those jargony words that regular, like, small business people don't always have staff that understands, and often just roll your eyes over. A lot of branding people will talk about things like brand architecture and your brand story and your archetypes and all these words that you're like, what does this even mean? The way I usually describe it to nonprofits is that your brand is the bridge that connects your mission to your marketing. And it's really just that simple. It's easy to then think that your branding is your marketing, but it's not. Your marketing are those tactical things that you're doing every day to get people to know you, to care about you, and then to take the actions that you want. That's your marketing. Your mission is why you exist today. But what's missing in the middle are things like, well, who are you for? What do those people care about? Why should they give to you other than all the other people? What is it? What is that unique thing that you do that makes you special and distinctive and perfect for those people to deliver on them? A lot of times organizations get confused and think that people are buying what they're selling, whether it's a membership or education or healthcare or giving to their organization. That's not what people are doing. People are giving to help fulfill their own dreams. And we need to understand that what the organization is a facilitator for that. And so your brand helps communicate, your why. Many people might have heard of, uh, people that talk about this whole, starts with why, Simon Sinek, great stuff that he talks about. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And your mission really talks about what you do. It doesn't always get into, this is why we exist as an organization. This is why, say you're raising money for breast cancer. There's lots of other organizations that do that. Why you? Have you gotten that clarity on who you're for and why you exist? Because a lot of times what I see is that people think that they're doing that work in their strategic planning, because strategic planning requires research and thinking and talking about people. But then your strategic plan really pushes towards your organizational goals. And without brand strategy, without thinking about your brand, that organizational strategy can end up in a virtual box somewhere. And then you start doing your marketing. And 3 years later, when you go to do your organizational planning again, you realize that all of these tactical things that you've been doing had really no effect on, or no bearing, or no push towards helping your organization meet those strategic goals. And brand is a great tool to help bring those two sides of your organization together.
I completely agree. I mean, Beth, you and I are on such the same wavelength. And I'm going to give some examples here just to kind of illustrate what you're talking about. So the best business book I ever read was a book called The Inside Advantage, and it's not well known. It's by Robert Bloom. I met Robert Bloom, and I was at a lecture that he was giving. Robert Bloom was the founder and CEO of Publicis, which is the
Oh,
largest
yeah.
advertising agency in the world. And he wrote a book. It's very small, but it's so good. And I actually, after I read the book and I had my team read the book too, we all started doing the exercises in the book together. And then we actually brought Robert in to help consult us to progress further. And so this is the key concept that, Beth, that you're even talking about. The Inside Advantage, the title of the book, illustrates this concept that your internal purpose is your inside advantage. So so to start off with branding and marketing, so you need to understand what your purpose is, why you do it, what your company culture is, and then everything starts to stem from that. Now, so we were talking about, that everyone should have a line of credit, right? Well, if you look at the tagline on our logo on our website, which is, it says, everyone should have a line of credit, ... just in case. That came from the exercise and the work that we did in that book, because that's the way we feel passionately
Mm-hmm.
about our why and everything. And it's our passion about it. Okay. People at my company have all gotten caught by surprise, and having a cash backup plan is important. Now, let's talk about the opposite. Let's talk about a company, BP Gas.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. BP, as most people know, with the Horizon oil spill, uh, uh, showed now that BP's marketing message that they are environmentally friendly, that their green logo with the little plant on it,
Mm-hmm.
okay, was all baloney. It was
Yep.
all fake. Okay.
Exactly.
I'll never buy gas from BP
Mhm.
ever. Right. Um, but and I wasn't inside of BP to say, oh, did they, do the employees really believe this? Was it pervasive throughout the company? I don't think so. Having seen the movie about the
Right.
Horizon oil spill, and I think it was just baloney. And surprise, surprise, from a petroleum company, right? But so there's an example where the marketing doesn't the marketing was just marketing, had
Hmm.
nothing to do based on fact and why for BP. But for my company, it our marketing and the work that we do to talk about our company stems from us, what we are. And that's what you're saying, right?
Very much so. For me, that it stems from that, and the things that we talk about a lot with nonprofits is a lot of times when people think of branding, you think of image. So mostly what we get from people is logo, what our logo looks like. But just like you were saying about BP, they had their logo and they had their colors and they had their internal idea of we're going to be this environmentally friendly. I'm sure that's what they told their branding company. We're going to be environment. We want to
Yep.
look like this. And so when you focus all of that brand energy on what you're going to look like, there's a couple of other components that often, if they're not aligned properly, can end up causing such a huge disconnect that people will turn away from your company. It's people don't realize you're never brand neutral. You're never brand neutral, and your brand exists whether you cultivate it or not. And so, really, rebranding and branding isn't about creating a brand. It's like archaeology. It's about finding your brand and then figuring out how do you want to steer it, how do you want to present yourself in the world. But it can't just stop with your logo, because if you have a logo that doesn't align with your message, if your message is not written for an audience that you have discovered is there to support you, and then ultimately, if your audience, your message, and your image do not line up in a way that delivers the experience that people are looking for, and the experience that you promise them in your messaging, everything breaks down. And usually it breaks down in a much bigger way than if you hadn't done anything at all. So I often tell people, don't bother doing branding unless you're going to live branding. It,
Yeah.
it's
And
it's a lot of work and it's a lot of money, and people think that it's the money in the execution, but it's not. It's the money in the outcome, in what you're willing to do every day to say, this is who we told you we were going to be, and this is all the tiny and big little ways. Like you said, it lives internally in your culture. But I always say branding is that spot where you figure out who you are and what you are stellar at delivering, what's totally unique about yourselves, and then looking for an audience of people that wants exactly that from you and figuring out how you can deliver perfectly for them. That sweet spot in the middle where you've got, this is what we do and this is who we do it for, and who's going to be in the center of our circle. A lot of times when you're focusing on marketing, people talk about things like target markets and your segments. And when we market like that, we're focusing on those tactical things, which might mean as a nonprofit, you've got to communicate to your donors, you've got to communicate to constituents, you've got to communicate to funders and governmental agencies, all of these different audiences. But if you look at all those different audiences, if you try and market to all of them equally all the time, I often say you're going to market like you have a sale on commas.
mm,
If you're this, comma, this, comma, this, comma, this. And when you do that, what happens is you genericize your message to make it okay for everyone. And you end up not being awesome for anyone. I feel like nonprofits, even more sometimes than corporations, have to find the people that they're perfect for, because you're not just doing transactional work, you're doing a relationship driven work with that. And organizations, I feel like corporations strive to do relationship work, but when somebody wants or needs your product, they're going to need your product. Nobody needs to donate to something. Nobody needs to necessarily become a membership of somebody. They have to believe. So you've got to really think about that. And so you've got to figure out who, the thing that we often say, upon whom does your future depend? Who are the people that need to be in the center of your circle? Who are the people that are already in the center of your circle? So the confusion that we often get into with marketing and branding is we want everyone to know about us. We want everyone to care about us. But marketing in a way that you're trying to reach all the way, like spread your arms wide, get everyone to care about us. Imagine you have a target as opposed to these buckets of people that you're looking. Imagine your audiences are concentric circles in a target and you're trying to reach everyone. You're aiming for the outside edge of a target. And if that's where your aim, that's where you're focusing, more likely than not, you're going to miss that target altogether. Whereas if you can figure out who who helped you thrive, who are the people that today, that if you could like 5x, 10x, 100x that behavior or those people, that you'd be golden. So who are those lovers, we call them, in the center of your circle? And then who are the likers that are one step out? Imagine if we shifted our focus from everyone to understanding what are the shared values between your lovers and your likers, and that you built a persona targeted specifically for them. Who would be attracted in by it? Imagine how differently you can market, because you won't be getting pulled off your center to be perfect for this person and that person who have completely different needs. It's not to say that your organization isn't for those people. It's not to say that you're not going to market to those people. But when you think about your brand, who you are, why you exist, that's what I mean, is that there's a difference between a brand audience and necessarily all of your many different audiences. And you have to prioritize, because most really, I don't think anyone can make everyone equally important all at the same time.
Yeah, I think and I also like the BP is a good example where you have a marketing message that probably a lot of the employees didn't, they said, yeah, right. Right. They knew it was
Mhm.
fake. Right. And that's why I think the book Inside Advantage is so powerful, because, I think it's basically saying everything needs to be aligned. And this is the other part, I as I mentioned, I worked for Xerox when I first started my career for 8
Okay.
years,
A little
and
company.
it was a great company. For those of you who are much younger now, they were the Google of its time, right? So they're, but what? They were trying to win this award called the Deming Award, and so they came out and they showed everybody what their mission was. They had their culture, they had their goals, and we were required as employees to carry a card with that information on it in our wallet. And if when we were going for the award, they would have executives going around asking you what the mission of the company was, right? And so the idea here was, it wasn't just for the award. They were using the award as a vehicle to improve the company, not for marketing. Okay.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
great. How did the employee, so how, as an employee, how did people feel about that? Did they feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get spot quizzed on this? Or did they feel more part of something bigger than themselves?
I
Did it
thought,
create synergy or
yeah.
separation?
Well, no, it was all positive. It was
That's
all,
great.
yeah, it was all, everyone got it. They understood it. They understood
Hmm.
why we were doing it. It was communicated really well why we were doing it. It was, it was, I think people, they really thought it was a great idea, and plus the upper level management, it wasn't a one-off thing. It was
That's the
constantly,
key.
yeah, constantly. So, and that's the reason I bring it up. You could do this really great work, and let's call it branding, right? But if it's only known amongst the management and not amongst everybody else, and you got to go over what you stand for at least once a month.
Hmm.
So I do that all the time in our meetings. Once a month, I get up there. I just a reminder. This is what we stand for. This is our why. This is our culture. These are our goals. And just to remember, have everybody remember. And I said, and then I'll say too, does everybody want to comment about it? Do they think we're not doing a good job of representing this? Are there times when we've made mistakes and we strayed from this? So you
Hmm.
have to keep introducing it, because your job as a leader, um, regardless of the size of the organization, and believe me, I've had small organizations where I've only had 4 or 5 employees, right? You still need to make sure that,
Hmm.
the least paid employee understands, what you stand for.
It's so funny that you should mention that too, because in some of the work that we've done over the last 2 years, I have never seen internal staff arise as a core constituent audience in the way that I have in the research work that we've done. People are, especially in the nonprofit world, that's the world I know the best. Direct service employees, those least paid employees are they didn't used to have to struggle to get them, and now that you have to struggle to get them, all of a sudden people are realizing how critical they are to delivering on their brand. We actually just did, and if anyone's listening, it's going to be up on our nonprofit toolkit website free. Just last week I did a free, we call them community webinars, with a couple of other panels. We did a great panel on how your internal culture impacts your brand, how all this staffing crisis, everything is going on. How do you make people feel like that? And some of the things that I would suggest is, in addition to sharing what your values are, like you're talking about, sharing what we stand for, try and turn it the opposite direction. Ask people, how are our values showing up in your job? How are our values showing up in your life? How did you incorporate values in that next person that you hired? How did you write a job description that shows that this is what we stand for, so that you're attracting in people that want what you want? For us, that is equally about audience focused brand. What you're looking to do is align and figure out who you are, and then attract more people that want what you have, that want to be part of what you have. That means donors, that means staff, that means grant funders, people that want you to be this one central organization that believes something. People like to get behind people that believe something, but it can't just be a poster on the wall that says these are what our values are, that people read on the back of the bathroom stall every day and be like, yeah, 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 we stand for integrity. Well, if you say you stand for integrity, I would want any employee to say, here's how I saw integrity happening at this organization this week, this day, this hour. And if they can't point to things that are actually demonstrating it, then your brand isn't being percolated through your team, and probably not out into the world either.
Yeah, I think it's one of the reasons too, where some organizations will have awards that will represent those values to
Hmm.
keep it in front of everybody, and I think there's always different questions and initiatives that can help keep that in front of you. I just thought of this idea too. I mean, I do 2 podcasts. I do the nonprofit MBA podcast, and I do the entrepreneur MBA podcast. As one's for nonprofits, one for businesses, because 80% of our clients are nonprofits, but 20% of our clients are also businesses. So the my guess is, for what I've seen from our clients, that nonprofits get the why and purpose and culture conversation that we're talking about much better than the businesses do. If you're a small business, not if you're over $10 million in size in a business, I think you get that, right?
Yep.
But I think
They do get it, but the challenge sometimes with nonprofits, because nonprofits are mission driven, you can become very internally focused. You can be too internally focused on, I'm here at this job and we're doing such great work. Everyone should love us. So it's almost the opposite problem that entrepreneurs and businesses are always thinking very much externally, and nonprofit people often attract people that truly want to do mission focused work, and want to be part of this thing in this culture. And there's such a deep belief in the work that you're doing, that getting it out there is challenging. And the other thing to remember is, there's lots of different kinds of nonprofits. A university is a nonprofit.
yeah,
A hospital system is a nonprofit.
yep.
So not every nonprofit is like a small charitable organization. And a lot of times, even at every size organization, there's bureaucracy, there's disconnect between the CEO or the executive director and the staff. There's often, like, what we see, founder syndrome happening. You've got a founder that wants things, and all the staff are there to just help that founder move in the direction.
Yeah.
So as organizations grow, as nonprofits grow, you still have to consider these things.
Yeah. I wonder what would you think if I said this, that nonprofits do a good job understanding their why and their mission, but they don't execute really good on it. Whereas small businesses don't understand their why and their purpose, but they tend to execute on their businesses better. Does that make any sense?
Possibly, I would say definitely for profit, small and large businesses execute on and deeply value the role marketing plays in them growing. Nonprofits can have a tendency to just be such believers in the value of their work that they think that their work should speak for itself. And sometimes that's in their cultural values. Sometimes it's in their, like, the fact that there's no budget for marketing or no staff. A lot, sometimes it's in, we have a term that we use for nonprofit marketers, that we call them slash marketers, because a lot of times at a nonprofit there's a development director and there's nobody else around, so the development director starts posting some stuff on social media, and somebody says, that's great, now you're the development slash communications director.
Yeah, yeah.
So, like, so many people at nonprofits, and this happens at small businesses too, when you're a small organization, there's not always enough bodies or monies to have everybody sit in a solo seat. At a large corporation, you might have a director of social media, you might have a videographer, you might have an actual graphic designer, as opposed to at a nonprofit, you typically have one person who they expect to be able to be a copywriter, graphic designer, web developer, social media person, public relations guru, strategist, and executor. So they want somebody to be really horizontal and look at the big picture, but make sure that the commas are all in the right place. Make sure that we, and going back and forth between those details and that vast wide breadth of skills. I always say, since you can't always fix that's happening, hire for somebody that wants to be wide. When you hire somebody that really wants to be a copywriter and expect them to be a graphic designer, when you hire somebody that really wants to be a designer and expect them to be a web developer, it's this cultural thing. You've got to get people that want what you want. I often say at my company, I don't want to hire people that want to work. I want to hire people that want to work with us. Like, I always say that we are hiring for somebody that wants to be here. Skills can be taught, but that can be hard sometimes. You get somebody at a nonprofit that wants to be at that cause. I've seen this happen too. We worked with an environmentally focused nonprofit, and this person came in to to be interviewed for the marketing role, and she was, had all of this environmental work in her background, and they were so excited, and they hired her. And they were like, I can't believe we got somebody at this high level to come in and take this job. Well, they got somebody at a high level to take the job because she wanted to do strategy. And they only had one person. When it came to, we need somebody to post on social media, she wasn't interested in that.
Yeah.
So you've got to really get clear on, like, what is the role that this person needs to fill.
So let's.
Otherwise, you're going to get cultural problems.
Yeah, we have about 6 minutes left or so. I could definitely extend it, but so let's bring it down to some recommendations about our topic today, which is brand strategy and audience targeting. So give us some hints or highlights as to what you would recommend to people who are working on brand strategy and audience targeting.
Absolutely. So let's start with brand strategy. So the first thing you have to get clear on is, what do you mean by branding? What does organization mean? What does branding mean at your organization? We actually just wrote a little explainer on that, and I'm sure that Steve's going to give you on this a link to come find me. So
Yep.
if you get this, come find me. We'll be happy to send you a link to download this explainer.
What is the link, just so everybody knows?
Oh, of course you're going to ask me that. I don't know it off the top of my head.
It's on your website, right?
Yeah. So I mean, they can you want me to get that?
No, you could
I
just,
don't know.
well, they probably get it directly from the website, which is
Yeah, so you can absolutely get it from our website,
iriscreative.com. Yeah,
iriscreative.com.
iriscreative.com. That's
Yeah,
fine.
irishcreative.com. You'll be
No,
able to find it. And so, I really should get that memorized.
no, they're going to go to your
But
website
we
anyway.
just did them. And so it breaks down branding projects into brand identity, brand strategy, or brand awareness, because people can mean all three of those different things when they come to it. So this is a little explainer that will tell you, okay, these are the questions you may be asking yourself at your organization. These are the problems that may be showing up that would lead you to understand whether these are one of the three projects. So next thing you need to think about is, if you're thinking, wow, we really need this brand strategy, this audience focus, this messaging, this experience. We don't just need a logo. A logo is not enough to solve our problem. We think we have a deeper problem than that. The next thing you have to consider is, are you really up for it? Are you really up for the massive workload and change that would be? And it's not just about the cost, and it's not just about how much work it is. Is your organization on board and ready to do deeper work than, now we have a purple logo instead of a blue logo? Because what I have seen, and as Stephen said, I did a podcast. We have 200 episodes. We did a podcast called Driving Participation for 5 years. And the number one thing that people said to me during the course of that podcast was, if you don't have buy-in from leadership, it's not going anywhere. It's going to tank. And that's sometimes hard for people to hear, because they don't want to be a top-down leadership. What the leader says goes, but that's not what anyone meant by that. What they meant was, is there a shared vision throughout your organization, from the top to the bottom, from the leadership organization to the lowest level people? Is there momentum? Is everyone steering the ship in the right direction? Are you excited about this project and about the change and the outcome that it's going to create for you? So the second thing I have for people that they can get from our website is, are you ready for a rebrand assessment? It's a 10-question assessment that says, if you're thinking about rebranding, ask yourself these 10 questions, and it will give you a score that will help indicate whether your team is ready to go into something strategic, if you're better off focusing on visual identity, or whether you need to think about maybe some other type of a project. So those are two really great tools that we've just created to help people figure out, where should they go if they're thinking about this stuff.
Yeah. If you're really new at this, and so you would go to your website, you would do that work. I think, man, it's awesome when you can get somebody or a book or something that asks you great questions that makes you think. That's really the
Well, I'm
key.
working on writing that, but that sure
Yeah.
takes a lot of time. I
Yeah.
have so much respect for people that write books. So there's lots of books out there on branding. Honestly, some of them are just tombs. They're written for people like me. Most books on branding are written for people like me who are going in to learn how to do branding. And I have learned most people don't really want to learn how to do branding. It's a lot of work to do on your own. So getting some help in whatever form that means is really wonderful. One of my favorite books is really written in the most plain language. It's called Why Johnny Can't Brand. And there's two authors, and of course I'm drawing a blank on the name of those two authors right now. But
Mhm.
Why Johnny Can't Brand is a great process-driven, hands-on step. This is how you go to do it. And I love that book. Another book that is not about branding, but is probably my favorite business book, is called Essentialism, which I absolutely love, because I think at nonprofits, because we're all these slash marketers, we get caught up in feeling like we have to do everything, all the things, all the time, the be everywhere marketing. Not that there's not value to doing that, but when you are a smaller team and you just can't be everywhere, you need to help your organization make better choices. Stephen started off by talking about what his tagline is for his business. The tagline for my business, Iris Creative, is focus your vision.
Hmm.
Because the thing about branding is, to be branded means to accept that to be perfect for some you have to be totally wrong for others. And that is a really hard pill for nonprofits to swallow, to be totally wrong for others. But you'll never really get to being perfect by some without narrowing those cattle chutes and saying, we're going to play in here. This is what we stand for. This is who we are, which means by nature that there's all these other things that we're not. And you have to be willing to let that stuff go in order to get really good here. It's easy for all of us to forget that Amazon started out selling books.
Yep.
They they weren't born the company that they are right now. And I think when we go into branding and when we think about ourselves as organizations, we spend a lot of time comparing somebody else's middle. A wonderful digital marketer named Amy Porterfield always says, don't compare somebody else's middle to your beginning or wherever you are on the stage. You could be anywhere, but they started out selling books and then they did the next thing and then they did the next thing. So you can build your brand and your brand will evolve with you. I always say branding is not a project, it's a process.
Yeah, I would also say too, like, I mentioned this earlier about this book, The Inside Advantage. And, so we started off by reading my management team. We all read the book and we started plugging along doing the book. And, it was a slog, right?
Mhm.
Where we're going through it. And then we bring Robert Bloom on for 1 hour. And in that 1 hour, he did what would have taken us 5 or 6 meetings to do. So, I mean, I would
Mhm.
recommend that people bring Beth on. Bring Beth on
Oh,
as a
thank you.
consultant and just
And
do
and
it.
I do agree with you. It's really hard to move through a strategic process on your own.
Yeah.
I think many humans, I mean, we're just either wired tactically or the natures of our jobs force us into thinking tactically so often. And it's so hard I have a coach, I have a business coach for my business, and it's hard to get out of your own way. And so it can be very helpful to bring people in for different aspects. And even if you're not at a place where you have the capacity to bring in an outside strategist, one of the first steps that we have in our branding process, which is we call it AMY, audience, message, image, experience. So the very first step is bringing together a stakeholder session. And what that means is coming together with a group of people that represent your range of audiences. So some staff, some leadership, some volunteers, some donors, some constituents, depending on what your ecosystem of audience is. Bring a group of, anywhere between 8 and 16 people together and start talking about these questions. It can be tremendously helpful just to get even a few, maybe you have clients, maybe you have members, depending on what structure of an organization you are. Become comfortable going a little bit outside your internal bubble and like letting some light in come into your community, because it's unbelievable the insight that bringing in representatives of different areas of your organization can do to help liven things up, to help you see things in a way that you didn't see. We create those sessions and facilitate them, but if you don't have the capacity to do it, don't let that stop you from trying to move forward in the best way that's right for you.
Well, I think that's a good way to end today's podcast. I like what you just said. I'd like to very much thank Beth Brodovsky from Iris Creative from coming on to today's podcast. If you like today's podcast, please feel free to share it with a friend and also subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. And if you like today's podcast or any of our other ones, the Nonprofit MBA podcast has become extremely popular. We're in the top 5% of all podcasts right now in our space. But your reviews really help us, especially if they're 5 stars. So please just give us a review. And of course, if you're looking for a line of credit for your nonprofit, you can call us at 862-207-4118 or visit our website at nonprofitmbapodcast.com. Beth, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, how would they go about doing that?
Oh, thanks so much, Stephen. So I am Beth, Beth, at Iris creative.com. That's the easiest way to find me. I am quite the email addict.
Great. So I want to end my podcast like I always do. Our listeners are out there every day making the world a better place. I really thank you for that. Everybody has to do our part. I know Beth's doing her part to try to make the world a better place. I'm trying to do my part as well, outside of our businesses I'm talking about. But you guys are out there doing all the heavy lifting, and I really thank you for that. But I just want to remind you, you're only as good to your people at work, your clients, your families, if you take care of yourself. So make sure you're taking good care of yourself. You're important, and you are a leader. So you need to make sure that you are doing the right things for yourself first. So everybody, have a fantastic day. It was a great podcast today. I really enjoyed it. It's just an interesting topic. And I think Beth gave us a lot of really good things to think about. So have a great day, everybody.